Begin with a table. Not an ordinary table, a great round one, wide as a courtyard, ringed with carved seats, and around it the finest men of an age, knights whose names would outlast their kingdoms, warriors who had faced giants and armies and their own worst knights and come through. Every seat has its man. Every man has his name lettered in gold above his place. The hall is loud with them, this brotherhood, this flower of the world. Every seat but one. There is a chair among them that stands empty, and has always stood empty, and the emptiness is not an accident. No knight sits there. No knight dares. The gold above it bears no name, or bears a name not yet arrived. And the strange thing, the thing a visitor to that hall would feel before anyone explained it, is that the empty chair is somehow the most powerful seat at the whole table. All that company of heroes arranges itself, without quite admitting it, around the one place none of them is worthy to fill. They call it the Siege Perilous. The Perilous Seat. The dangerous chair. And the danger is real and specific. It is said that any man who sits in it who is not meant to sit in it will be destroyed, swallowed by the earth, consumed, unmade, not as punishment exactly, but as a kind of law, the way fire burns what is not fireproof. The seat does not forgive presumption. It cannot be fooled by reputation, or rank, or a man's good opinion of himself. It waits, in perfect stillness, for one person only. And to everyone else it says, not you. Not yet. Perhaps never. This is a story about that chair. But I will tell you now, at the start, that it is not really a story about a chair. It is a story about worth, about the difference between the honors we claim and the honors we become fit for, about the ruin that waits for the man who grasps at what he has not earned, and about the quiet, patient, invisible work by which a human being turns himself into the kind of person for whom the highest seat is not death but home. The Stoics, 11 centuries before these tales were written down, had already mapped the whole of it. They did not know about knights or grails. But they knew about the Siege Perilous, because they understood the one thing it is really about, that there are places in a life you cannot take by force or wanting, that can only be filled by what you have made of yourself, and that to sit down in them before you are ready is not glory. It is destruction. Let us walk up to the empty chair, and learn to read it. First, where the chair came from, because the intention behind it is the first lesson. The old tales say the round table was made by design, and the designer was Merlin, and he did not build it as furniture. He built it as an image, the deliberate echo of an older table, and behind that, of an older one still. The story reaches back through a keeper of holy things, a man who was said to have set a table in the image of the table of the Last Supper, a table with a place left open, the place of the one who was absent, the place no ordinary man could fill. And so the round table, when Merlin shaped it, inherited that open place, a seat kept vacant on purpose, a wound in the circle, a space that was part of the meaning. Consider what a strange act of design that is. Merlin builds the most important piece of furniture in the kingdom, the very heart of the fellowship, and he builds into it a seat that will sit empty for a generation, a seat that will kill anyone who mistakes it for an ordinary chair. He builds a permanent reminder that the fellowship, for all its glory, is incomplete. That the best men in the world are not yet the best man. That something is still missing, and everyone must live, every day, in the presence of its absence. And notice the shape of the table itself. Round. No head. No foot. No seat higher than another. The tale-tellers were explicit about why, at a round table, no man can claim the chief place, because there is no chief place, the king himself sits as one of the ring. It is an image of a certain kind of equality, the equality of those who have earned their seat, each in his own place, none above the rest. the Stoics had a word for this vision. They called the world a single city, and all rational beings its citizens, a cosmopolis, a community not of blood or rank but of shared nature and shared reason. The round table is that idea in oak, a brotherhood of equals, each with his station, each owing something to the whole, gathered around a common center. And at that center, the empty place, the standard none of them has yet met. Marcus Aurelius returned to this thought constantly. We were made, he reminded himself, for cooperation, like the feet, the hands, the eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth, and to work against one another is contrary to nature. He even coined a sharp little warning to himself, that to cut yourself off from your neighbor, to set yourself apart and above, was to make yourself a kind of amputated limb, severed from the body you were meant to serve. The grasping knight, lunging for the highest seat to raise himself over his fellows, was doing precisely that, trying to become the head of a table that had no head, to stand above a circle whose whole meaning was that no one stood above it. He was severing himself from the fellowship in the very act of trying to crown himself its greatest member. The worthy man does the opposite. He takes his own place in the ring, does his own part for the whole, and finds his greatness not in rising above the others but in serving, superbly, alongside them. So before we even come to the peril, the chair is already teaching. It says, a life, a fellowship, a soul rightly ordered, keeps a seat open for what it has not yet become. It does not fill every space with its own importance. It leaves room, deliberate, humbling room, for the ideal that stands above it. The mind that built this table was wise enough to build in a place it could not itself occupy. Most of us are not that wise. Most of us try to sit everywhere. Now the name. Siege Perilous, from an old word for seat, and a plain word for danger. The perilous seat. And we should be careful about what kind of danger is meant, because it is not the danger of a trap or an enemy. It is a stranger and more searching thing. The seat is perilous the way deep water is perilous to one who cannot swim, and no peril at all to one who can. The water has not changed. The danger is not in the chair, waiting to leap out, the danger is in the mismatch between the man and the place. To the one it is meant for, the Siege Perilous is the safest seat in the hall, is by right, fitted to him as a lock is fitted to its key. To everyone else, the very same chair is annihilation. Same seat. Opposite outcomes. And the only variable is what the man is. Here is the first place the Stoics would lean in and say, yes, this is exactly how the world works, and almost no one believes it. They taught that the things people chase, high position, honor, the great seat, the crown, the name in gold, are in themselves neither good nor bad. They are, in the Stoic phrase, indifferent, they take their whole character from the person who holds them. Power in a good man's hands is one thing, the identical power in a fool's hands is a catastrophe. The seat does not make the man. The man makes the seat safe or fatal. And so to ask, is this honor good, is to ask the wrong question. The right question is always, am I the kind of person for whom this would be good, or the kind for whom it would be ruin? The empty chair puts that question in its sharpest possible form, because it does not deliberate and it does not err. It is a perfect judge with a single verdict, delivered instantly and without appeal. And most of what we call ambition, the Stoics would say, is the frantic effort to avoid ever facing a judge like that, to secure the seat before anyone can check whether we're fit for it, to get our name lettered in gold by grasping rather than by becoming. The Siege Perilous is the nightmare of the ambitious man, an honor that cannot be seized, only deserved, and that destroys you for the difference between the two. So when the old tales call it perilous, hear the full weight of the word. It does not mean difficult. It means This is a place where the truth about you will be told, whether you like it or not, the instant you sit down. And for most men, most of the time, the truth about them is not yet something they can survive hearing. Every legend of a forbidden thing has, somewhere in it, the one who could not resist, and this one is no exception. The tales tell of bold men, proud men, men of real accomplishment, who looked at the empty seat and thought, "Why not me?" Who reasoned that they were surely worthy, that their deeds entitled them, that the warnings were for lesser men. And the tales tell what became of them. They Saturday. And the earth took them, or the fire took them, and they were never seen again. The gold above the seat did not so much as flicker. The table went on. The chair stood empty as before, wiped clean of the man who had mistaken his wanting for his worth. Sit with that image, because the anatomy of it is precise, and it is the anatomy of a particular kind of human ruin. The man who sat down was not, by the world's measure, a nobody. That is the whole point. He was accomplished enough to believe his accomplishments had earned him the highest place. And the fatal move, the move that unmade him, was not the ambition itself. It was the self-certification. He appointed himself worthy. He looked inward, found himself impressive, and treated his own verdict as the final one. He confused the opinion he held of himself with the reality of what he was. The Stoics watched this failure mode constantly, and they had a hard, clear teaching about it. Epictetus told his students, in effect, do not undertake a role beyond your powers, for if you do, you will not only fail in that role, you will lose the one you might actually have filled well. Reach beyond your measure and you get nothing, you disgrace yourself in the higher place and abandon the lower one where you had something real to give. The man who grasps the Siege Perilous does not merely fail to become the Grail Knight. He is destroyed, which is to say, whatever genuine worth he did have is consumed along with his presumption. The overreach doesn't just fail. It burns down what was already there. And notice where the error lives. It lives in the one territory the Stoics said was truly ours, our judgments. The seat did not wrong him. His circumstances did not wrong him. He was undone by a single false judgment he handed down in the privacy of his own mind, I am worthy of this. No enemy planted that thought. No one forced his assent. He ruled in his own favor, without evidence, against the truth, and then he acted on the ruling, and the ruling killed him. The Stoics would say he was not destroyed by the chair at all. He was destroyed, as every such man is, by his own untested opinion of himself. Seneca watched this happen to men all around him, in the wealthiest and most powerful society of his age, and he drew the lesson bluntly, a great many people are ruined not by their misfortunes but by their good fortune, undone precisely by the honors and powers they proved unable to carry. The seat that would have been safe for a stronger soul crushes the weaker one who grasps it. The elevation that a prepared character would wear with ease topples the unprepared one the moment he is raised. Fortune's gifts, Seneca warned, are heavier than they look, and they break the back of anyone who reaches for them before he has built the strength to bear them. The Siege Perilous is only the most honest version of a thing that happens quietly, all the time, everywhere. People are destroyed by getting exactly what they grasped for, because they grasped for it before they were fit to hold it. Epictetus gave his students a gentler image for the discipline the destroyed man lacked. Behave in life, he said, as though at a banquet. When the dish comes round to you, reach out and take a modest portion, courteously. When it has not yet reached you, do not stretch across the whole table and seize it, wait, and it will come, or it will not, and either way you have kept your dignity. The proud knight could not wait. He saw the highest dish at the table and lunged across everything to grab it before it was offered to him, and a man who grabs what has not been passed to him, at that table, does not merely commit a rudeness. He is unmade. The one who could have sat there was the one who never lunched, who would have let the dish come to him in its time, and who could therefore be trusted with it when it did. Here is what makes the Siege Perilous such a pure and terrible instrument: it is completely indifferent to reputation. And reputation, to the Stoics, was one of the great illusions of human life, perhaps the great illusion. Think about how the ordinary world assigns the high seats. It assigns them by reputation, by what people say, by who is admired, by the story that has gathered around a name. A man becomes great because enough others call him great. He is given the place of honor because the crowd has agreed he deserves it. And so the ambitious learn, quite rationally, to work on the reputation rather than on the reality, to manage what people think, because it is thinking, not being, that hands out the seats. It is the oldest game there is. The Siege Perilous does not play it. The chair has never heard your reputation and would not care if it had. It cannot be lobbied, cannot be impressed by your past, cannot be swayed by the fact that everyone agrees you are magnificent. It reads one thing only, what you actually are, at the root, in the place no audience can see, and it reads it perfectly. To a man who has spent his whole life building a reputation, the Siege Perilous is an obscene machine, because it renders the entire enterprise worthless in an instant. All that careful management of opinion, and the chair simply doesn't consult opinion. This is exactly the divide the Stoics drew, and drew constantly. Your reputation, they said, is not yours. It lives in other people, in their minds, their talk, their fickle and borrowed judgments, and what lives in other people can never be under your control. To stake your peace, or worse, your sense of your own worth, on reputation is to hand the deepest thing you have to the least reliable custodians imaginable. But your character, what you actually are, the condition of your own will and judgment and action, that is entirely yours, the one thing no crowd can grant and no crowd can take. And the tragedy of the reputation chaser is that he pours his whole life into the thing that isn't his and neglects the only thing that is. Marcus Aurelius, who wore the highest seat in the actual world, Emperor of Rome, a man to whom the entire apparatus of reputation was available on a scale we can barely imagine, wrote a startling thing in his private notebook, never meant for any eyes but his own. He marveled, again and again, at how much labor people pour into what their neighbors say and think, and how little into the state of their own souls, how a man will exhaust himself guessing at another's opinion of him when he could simply look inward and set right the one thing that is his to set right. Have you noticed, he asked himself, that almost all our unhappiness comes from letting our good depend on what happens in other people's minds, things we cannot see, cannot control, and would not trust if we could? Set your own inner life in order, he told himself, and let the talk be what it will. It was the emperor's version of the empty chair, the most reputation-rich man alive, reminding himself daily that reputation was worth nothing and only character was real. The empty chair is that Stoic verdict made visible. It is the universe declining to consult your press. It says, I do not care what they call you. I do not care what you have persuaded them to believe. Show me what you are, and it will be enough, or it will kill you, and there is no third outcome and no way to talk your way past it. To a shallow man that is a horror. To a man who has quietly built something real where no one was watching, it is the only judge worth facing, because it is the only one that tells the truth. We have spoken of the man who sat and was destroyed. Now let us speak of the greater number who did not sit, and let us see their restraint for what it truly was, because we usually get it exactly wrong. Picture the ordinary knights of that table, year after year, in the presence of the empty seat. Brave men, all of them, men who did not know the meaning of retreat, who would ride at any enemy, who had never in their lives declined a challenge out of fear. And every day they passed a seat that promised the highest glory in the world, and every day they did not take it. Now, was that cowardice? The refusal of a challenge? The one dare these fearless men would not accept. The Stoics would say, no, it was the highest courage in the whole hall, and the rarest. Because the courage it takes to not grasp what you are not fit for is a completely different and far scarcer thing than the courage to charge an enemy. Any bold fool can charge. What those knights had, the good ones, the wise ones, was self-knowledge, the honest, unflinching, humbling measurement of their own worth against the standard of the seat, and the discipline to accept the answer. They looked at the Siege Perilous and did the hardest thing a proud man can do. They said, not me. I know my measure, and this is beyond it. And then they lived with that, without bitterness, and went on being excellent in the seats that were theirs. This is self-knowledge as a form of strength, and the Stoics prized it above almost everything, because they saw that without it every other virtue goes wrong. The command over the temple of Apollo, know thyself, was for them not a mild suggestion but the first labor of a serious life. Know your measure. Know what is yours to do and what is beyond you. Know the difference between the roles you can honorably fill and the ones that would consume you. The man who knows himself does not need to be restrained from the Siege Perilous by fear of destruction. He restrains himself, freely, out of simple accuracy about what he is. And that freely chosen restraint is worth more than all the boldness of the man who sat down. There is a deep gentleness in this teaching, too, and it's worth pausing on. To not be the Grail Knight is not to be a failure. Most of those knights were never meant for that seat, and their worth was not diminished one particle by that fact. Their honor lay, entirely, in filling their own places beautifully, in being the finest possible version of what they actually were, rather than a destroyed imitation of what they were not. The Stoic does not grieve that he is not the sage, the perfect one, the single soul fit for the highest seat. He simply gets on with the honorable work of his own station, does it with everything he has, and leaves the perilous seat for the one it belongs to, without envy, because he understands that envy of another's seat is just another way of failing to sit well in your own. Epictetus put this in an image his students never forgot. Remember, he said, that you are an actor in a play, and the play is not yours to write. Another has chosen the length of the piece and the part you are to perform, a poor man, a ruler, a common citizen. Your whole business, the entirety of what is up to you, is to act well the part that is given, for the choosing of it belongs to someone else. To rage that you were not cast in the lead, to abandon your own role because you coveted a greater one, is to fail at the only thing that was ever actually in your power. The knights who did not sit had understood this to the bone. Each played his given part, this one a champion, that one a counselor, this one a guardian of the marches, and played it with everything he had, and did not ruin his real role by lunging at a role that was never written for him. The one empty seat had a single actor named for it in the mind of the author. Everyone else's dignity lay in performing, magnificently, the part that was actually theirs. Let us dwell now on the empty seat itself, not as a danger, but as a presence. Because a vacant chair kept deliberately at the center of your life does something to you, and the Stoics understood exactly what. Every day, the knights of that table ate and spoke and planned in the sight of a seat none of them could fill. It was always there, silent, gold-lettered or blank, waiting. And a thing like that, lived with daily, becomes a kind of teacher without ever saying a word. It is a standard made visible. It stands for the person none of them yet was, the complete one, the perfected one, the one in whom worth was total. And to live beneath such a standard is to be quietly, constantly called upward. Not shamed. Called. Reminded, at every meal, that there is a height above your current height, and that the fellowship exists in relation to it. The Stoics built their entire moral life around exactly such a figure. They called him the sage, the perfectly wise person, the one whose judgments were all correct, whose will was wholly aligned with nature, who was free and unshakable and good all the way through. And here is the striking thing, most Stoics freely admitted that the sage was vanishingly rare, that they had perhaps never met one, that they themselves were certainly not sages, that they were all, at best, making progress toward a summit they might never reach. The sage was the empty seat at the center of their table. Not a man any of them claimed to be. A standard above them all, kept deliberately in view, so that they would always know which way was up. And this is a subtle and crucial art, to hold a standard high above yourself without either of the two failures that usually follow. The first failure is to pretend you have already met it, to sit down in the perilous seat, to declare yourself the sage, the finished one, the worthy one, and be destroyed by the gap between the claim and the truth. The second failure is the opposite, to look at the impossible height and despair, to say I can never be that, so why try, and to abandon the climb entirely. The Stoic threads between them. He keeps the seat in view. He does not sit in it. And he does not turn away from it either. He simply orients his whole life toward it and climbs, knowing he may never arrive, certain that the climbing is itself the thing that matters. That is what the empty chair offers anyone wise enough to receive it, not a torment, and not a false comfort, but a direction. A fixed high point by which to steer. Most people live without one, without any standard above them, taking whatever seat is nearest, calling wherever they happen to be, good enough. The knights of that table could not do that. The empty seat would not let them. And that, more than any of their battles, may be what made them great. They lived, every day, in the presence of something better than themselves, and they let it pull them upward. And then, one day, at the Feast of Pentecost, he came. The tales tell it quietly, which is right, because the coming of the worthy one is never loud. An old man leads a young knight into the hall, a youth in red and white, unknown, unannounced, with the plainness of someone who has nothing to prove because he is not aware there is anything to prove. And the old man brings him to the forbidden seat. And there, on the Siege Perilous, where no name had ever stood, fresh letters of gold have appeared, as if the chair itself had spoken at last, this is the seat of Galahad. And the young knight sits down. And nothing happens. No fire. No opening earth. No destruction. He simply sits, at ease, in the seat that had killed every man who tried it, as naturally as you might sit in a chair in your own home, because that is precisely what it is. His by right. Fitted to him. The lock and its only key. The whole hall falls silent, and then erupts, because they are seeing the thing they had waited a generation to see. The empty place is empty no longer. The standard has a face. The one for whom the fellowship kept its open wound has finally walked in out of the ordinary world and taken his ordinary, impossible seat. Now here is what the Stoics would have us notice above everything else, and it is easy to miss. Galahad does not strive for the seat. He does not campaign. He does not arrive announcing his worth, marshalling his deeds, arguing his case. He does not, in fact, seem to want the seat in the grasping way the destroyed men wanted it. He simply is what he is, and the seat recognizes it. The worthiness was not summoned in the moment of sitting, it was already there, complete, built long before, in the years no tale bothers to record. The sitting only revealed it. The chair did not confer his worth. It confirmed it. The old tales double the lesson, in case we missed it. That same day, another marvel appears, a sword, set in a floating stone upon the river, with letters declaring that none shall draw it but the best knight in the world, and the boldest men of the table try, and strain, and fail, some of them wounded for their presumption, until Galahad comes and draws it out as easily as if it had been waiting in his own hand. Again the same shape. A thing meant for one man, fatal or futile to all the rest, effortless to the one it was made for. The sword, like the seat, does not respond to strength or status or the ferocity of your wanting. It responds only to what you are. And the man it was made for does not grunt and heave, he simply reaches out, because it was already his, and had only been waiting for him to arrive. This is the deepest thing the whole legend has to teach, and the Stoics said it in 100 ways. Character is not something you claim at the decisive moment. It is something you have already become, quietly, by the time the decisive moment arrives, or you have not, and no amount of wanting will manufacture it on the spot. The Stoics trained for exactly this. They rehearsed adversity in the calm of the morning, they practiced the right response on small frictions so that it would be ready under great ones. They built the habit of virtue in 1,000 unobserved moments precisely so that when the observed moment came, they would not have to reach for a character they had never made. The preparation was invisible and the performance was public, and the second depended entirely on the first. Galahad's ease in the Siege Perilous was the visible tip of an enormous, buried discipline. What looked like destiny was actually preparation, so complete, so long, so deep, that by the end it was indistinguishable from fate. The worthy man is worthy before the test. In the long invisible labor of 10,000 small choices no one applauded, the discipline kept when it was inconvenient, the truth told when a lie was easier, the desire mastered when no one would have known he indulged it, the right thing done in the dark. Galahad could sit in the Siege Perilous because he had spent his whole life, unwatched, becoming the kind of man who could. The seat was the last 5 seconds of a story that was really about all the years before. And so the lesson turns, gently, from the seat back to you. You cannot become worthy of your Siege Perilous at the seat. You become worthy far away from it, long before, in private, in the practice, or you arrive unready and are destroyed by the gap. The moment of glory is not where character is made. It is only where character is shown. The making happens earlier, in the dark, in the discipline, where no gold letters record it and no hall falls silent to watch. We reach now a turn that the impatient always miss, and it may be the most Stoic thing in the entire tale. When Galahad sits in the Siege Perilous, the story does not end. It begins. The moment the worthy one takes his place, the Grail quest opens, and the whole fellowship rides out into the hardest ordeal of their lives, a journey that will scatter them, test them past endurance, and bring many of them to their deaths. Read that carefully. The highest seat, achieved at last, turns out not to be a reward you sink into. It is a door you are required to walk through, into more labor, more danger, more demand. Worth is not a destination where you finally get to rest. Worth is what qualifies you for the harder work. Galahad does not sit down in the Siege Perilous and enjoy his glory. He sits down, and immediately the real quest begins, and it asks more of him than anything before it, because that is what worthiness is for. The Stoics would nod grimly and say, of course. This is the thing beginners never understand about the good life. They imagine virtue as an arrival, a summit where the striving stops and you rest in your achievement. But the Stoic knew there is no such summit and no such rest. The wise life is practice, all the way down, without graduation. Every day presents its fresh dichotomy of control, its new demand for the right judgment, its new test of the will. You never finish. You never get to coast on yesterday's virtue. The moment you think you have arrived, the moment you sit down in the seat and call the work done, is precisely the moment you have begun to fall, because virtue held statically is already decaying. It lives only in the continued doing. Epictetus even described what a person in the middle of this endless practice looks like, the marks of one who is making real progress rather than merely posing as arrived. Such a person, he said, blames no one, praises no one, complains of no one, accuses no one. He says nothing about himself as though he were somebody or knew something. When he is thwarted, he looks to himself for the fault. When he is praised, he quietly smiles at the one praising. When he is criticized, he does not trouble to defend. He goes about like a convalescent, careful not to disturb the thing that is healing in him before it has set. He has moved his desire off everything not in his power and thrown the whole weight of it onto the work of his own character. And this is the mark that matters most for our tale. If he seems foolish or unremarkable to others, he does not mind, because he is not performing for them. He is not trying to sit in any seat. He is simply becoming, day after day, and letting recognition arrive or not arrive as it will. And there's a mercy hidden in all this, though it doesn't look like one at first. If the highest seat were a prize, a place to stop, then achieving it would be the end of you, in the truest sense, the end of your growth, your usefulness, your aliveness. It is because the seat is a door and not a prize that the worthy man stays alive in the deepest way, always climbing, always needed, always becoming. The quest that opens when Galahad sits down is not a punishment for his worthiness. It is the gift of it. He has become the kind of man who gets to attempt the impossible thing, and the attempting, not the resting, is the whole reward. So do not long for the seat as a place to stop. If you are ever worthy of your own Siege Perilous, you will find that it does not release you from labor. It commissions you for more. The prize for doing the hard thing well is always, only, a harder thing done in better company. That is not a disappointment. To the Stoic, it is the very shape of a life worth living. The tale of Galahad ends, as the deepest tales do, with a death, and it is not a defeat, and we should learn to see why. He achieves the Grail. He reaches the end of the impossible quest, sees the thing no other knight fully sees, receives what he was made for. And having achieved it, having become, fully, the thing his whole life was aimed at, he does not cling to the world. He is ready to leave it. The old stories say he asked to depart, that having seen what he had seen, he had no wish to remain, and that his death came not as a robbery but as a completion, gently, at the summit of his life, with everything finished and nothing left undone. He is, in the end, the one man who gets to lay the whole thing down while it is still perfect. The Stoics had a phrase for the posture behind such a death. Never say of anything, they taught, that you have lost it, say that you have given it back. Your life, your achievements, the very quest you completed, all of it was on loan from the beginning, and the wise man holds it that way from the start, so that when the time comes to return it, he is not shattered by an outrage he should have seen coming. Galahad does not die grasping. He dies the way he sat in the Siege Perilous, at ease, unafraid, fitted to the moment, because he had made his peace with the terms of the loan long before it was called in. He gives it back. He does not lose it. And the difference between those two verbs is the difference between a good death and a broken one. And there is a further thing here, quieter and more searching. The one man worthy of the highest seat is also the one man ready to let go of everything, and this is not a coincidence. It is almost a law. The Stoics saw that the deepest freedom, the thing that made a man truly unassailable, was precisely this, to want nothing so badly that its loss could destroy you. To hold even your own life with an open hand. The destroyed men at the round table grasped at a seat, at glory, at a worth they had not earned, and the grasping was their ruin. Galahad grasps at nothing, not even his own survival, and that ungrasping is the very center of what made him worthy. The man fit for the highest place is the man who could walk away from it. The one who could hold the Grail is the one who did not need to keep it. Sit with that paradox, because it overturns everything the grasping world believes. We are taught that the worthy are those who want the most, seize the most, hold the most. The tale says the opposite, and the Stoics said it too. The worthy one is the one who has given it all back in advance, who sits in the highest seat without needing it and lays down his life without protesting it, whose hands are open at both ends. That open hand is not weakness. It is the strongest thing a human being can be, and it is the true and secret qualification for every seat worth taking. So let us come, at the last, back from Camelot to your own life, because you have a Siege Perilous too. Everyone does. It is any seat you are tempted to take before you are ready. It is the role you want the title of before you have done the work of it. It is the identity you announce before you have earned it, the authority you grasp at before you can carry it, the honor you would rather be given than become fit for. We all have one, some place, some name, some station that calls to us with the whisper the empty chair whispered to the proud knights, why not you? Surely you're worthy. Surely the warnings are for lesser men. And we all know, if we are honest, the specific ruin of sitting down in it too soon, the promotion we weren't ready for that exposed and consumed us, the claim we made about ourselves that reality then demolished, the seat we grabbed that swallowed the real if smaller worth we actually had. The legend's counsel, and the Stoics, is the same, and it is not what the grasping world will ever tell you. It is this: stop trying to sit in the seat. Go and become the person for whom the seat is safe. Turn your whole attention away from claiming and toward becoming. Do the invisible work, the 10,000 small unwatched choices, that build a character the highest seat would recognize and welcome rather than destroy. And then stop worrying about the seat at all, because a worthiness that is real does not need to seize its place opens to it, the gold letters appear, and it sits down at last as naturally as coming home. The worthy do not grasp. They become, and are recognized. The grasping is itself the proof of unreadiness. And notice, this is the final gift of the empty chair, how free this makes you. Once you stop trying to sit in seats you haven't earned, an enormous weight lifts. You no longer have to manage your reputation, or race your rivals to the honor, or defend a claim about yourself that you're secretly unsure of, or live in terror of being found out. You simply do the honorable work of your own real station, as well as you possibly can, and you let the seats find whom they will find. If yours opens to you, you will sit in it in peace. If it never does, you will have lost nothing that was truly yours, and you will have spent your life becoming genuinely excellent rather than falsely certified, which was always the better bargain. The man who has given up grasping has already won the only victory that was ever available. He has become someone the truth cannot destroy. There is an empty seat at the center of every serious life. Do not rush to fill it with yourself. Keep it in view. Let it call you upward. Do the quiet work, in the dark, that no one sees. And trust that what you actually become, not what you claim, not what you seize, not what you persuade the crowd to say, is the only thing that will ever be lettered in gold above a place that is truly, safely, unshakably yours. The chair is still empty. It is waiting, as it always was, not for the boldest, and not for the loudest, and not for the one who wants it most, but for the one who has quietly made himself ready. Go and become that one. And let the seat take care of itself.